One of the more popular uses I've been noticing for airsoft guns these days is a lot of movie directors and producers have been using these as props for making videos and movies. And these work great for both smaller budget as well as big budget movies because they give you a very realistic example of what a firearm looks and feels like without costing nearly as much as an actual weapon would cost you. One gun that's very well suited for this kind of production use is the CM16 gas blowback series. This is the standard combat machine gas blowback. It's also available in the Raider, which is a slightly modified version of this. These work really well as movie props because they're not nearly as expensive as some of the full metal ones that are out there, but it gives you all of the same moving functions and realism of any other blowback that's out on the market. Now, with these guns becoming more and more popular, the problems that we're getting into is a lot of guys that are probably really great video or movie directors don't know a heck of a lot about airsoft guns. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to give you a quick brush up on exactly how you use, load, and maintain the G&G gas blowback rifle. So the first thing you're going to have to be concerned with is exactly what are you going to use to power the guns. Green gas guns generally work off of propane. Now, some of you guys think that there's a major difference between green gas and propane. It's the same stuff. Propane in its natural state has no color or odor or smell or anything to it. So when they bottle it as a heating fuel commercially, they add that smell to it so that if you accidentally get a gas leak somewhere, you can become aware of it because you'll smell that rotten egg smell, so you won't accidentally light up a cigarette and blow your entire house up. When they bottle it as green gas, they leave that odor out so you can shoot the stuff indoors and not stink your house up. The only other major difference is that the green gas is supposed to come with silicone pre-mixed into the can, where if you're using propane from the normal commercial bottler like this, you have to buy the silicone oil separately and add it in yourself. So essentially using green gas and propane are pretty much the same when it comes to using them as a propellant in an airsoft gun. With one minor caveat that I've noticed myself when I've been working on green gas guns that the owner uses propane rather than green gas, I've noticed more crud and buildup inside of the pistons of the guns compared to the guns with people using green gas. Now, my theory on the matter is that when they bottle this stuff as a heating fuel, they don't necessarily filter it as much as when they use it as green gas because it has to go through smaller nozzles. So my theory is that when they bottle it commercially, there may be more crap in the bottle versus when they bottle it as green gas. Now, I don't have any kind of scientific data to back me up on this. This is just something that I've noticed from taking the guns apart, and it always seems uncanny that the propane guns have more crud in them. So if you're going to be using propane in order to power your gas blowback gun, you're going to want to go ahead and get a little bit of silicone oil to keep the thing lubricated properly. Now, in order to do that, you're going to put a few drops of the silicone oil into the neck of the bottle before you screw the adapter down onto it. I recommend about 2 or 3 drops, not a huge amount, and that way every time you're injecting the gas into the gun, you're also getting a little bit of silicone oil in there to keep your O-rings lubricated. Now, I'm not quite sure that you can over-oil your gun. There's probably a certain point where you can put too much oil into it. Oil obviously will attract dirt, so you don't want to put too much in there. I recommend probably once every 5 to 6 times that you charge the gun with gas to add a little bit of oil in there to keep the valve lubricated. Also, when you're not using the gun, they recommend to leave a little bit of gas in the gun. That way that oil stays in there and keeps the O-rings lubricated. So in order to charge your magazines with gas, it's necessary to hold the can in an inverted position when you're putting the gas into the magazine. And that goes for green gas as well as propane. You want it to be upside down when you add the gas to the magazine. Just locate the fill valve, which is located on the back of the magazine. You want to put the can in so that it's exactly perpendicular to the valve. You don't want to do it so it's cocked on an angle because the gas will just shoot out. So put it straight in, just press down firmly but not too much, and you'll actually hear a point where the gas actually begins to fill the magazine up. You'll hear a difference in the sound coming from the nozzle. If you like, you can put your ear up to it and you can actually hear it gurgling, and when that gurgling stops, you know the magazine is all the way filled up. Now, if you've ever read the manual that come with the G&G guns, they recommend that you do this for a maximum of 4 seconds. But in my past experience, this is not necessarily enough time to get enough gas in there to make the gun function properly. I think the rule of thumb is just use your eyes and ears, and you can tell when the magazine's getting full because you'll see gas spurting out the side of it, and you'll know that that magazine is all the way filled up. I don't necessarily believe that there's any kind of danger of overfilling the magazine. It's just once the pressure is equalized between the can and the magazine, then it's got as much gas as it can handle, and over and above that, you're just going to waste a little bit of gas watching it spurt out the side of it. Now, one tip I can give you to make the gun work a little more efficiently is to let the magazine warm up a little bit after you've charged it up with the gas. When you're putting the gas in there, it's lowering the temperature of the metal and the magazine, which lowers the pressure of the gas. So I don't know if you've taken any science courses, but as you lower the temperature, the pressure goes down. As green gas's pressure goes down, it becomes less powerful, so you're just going to get less shots out of a cold magazine. So let the magazine warm up a little bit before you stick it into the gun and start using it. One of the really cool things about the version 2 gas blowbacks from G&G is that when you fired your last shot, the bolt locks back in its rearward position, so it gives you a little more realism for doing magazine changes and using the bolt catch to drop the bolt back on a fresh magazine. The problem is if you're using this as a movie prop and you don't necessarily have any BBs in the magazine, if you go to fire this without any ammo in it and just gas, you'll just fire it one time and then the slide will lock back every time. The nice thing is that G&G actually thought of that, and they added this little switch in the magazine which allows you to deactivate that function, so you can fire this in dry fire mode, so you can fire it repeatedly without having the slide lock back in its rearward position. Now, it's important to note when you go to put a magazine into a gas blowback gun that you go ahead and cock the action before you put the magazine in. The problem is if you leave the hammer down from the last shot and you go to put a fresh magazine in, that magazine will strike the hammer and actually let the gas out of the gun. So make sure you cock the thing back before you put the magazine in. Now, as far as actually firing the gun, once you cock the gun and you have the magazine put in properly, it should fire just fine, either semi-automatic or fully automatic from this point. Now, it's important to note that with gas blowback guns, it's necessary to get into the inside workings of it occasionally to keep it oiled up so that it continues to work properly. In order to get in there, there's a pin in the front of the receiver that you just simply push that pin through, which allows you to get into the receiver. You just simply separate the two halves of the gun, which just generally slide apart like that, and allows you to get into the action of the gun. Now, in order to lubricate the gun, I recommend only using an Airsoft approved silicone oil for lubricating airsoft guns. The kind we're using today is an ICS Gear Lube, which is a low viscosity silicone oil. What you want to do is basically pull back the slide so that you can see the O-ring inside of there. In this case, it's a little green O-ring in there. Just go ahead and stick your nozzle in it and get a little bit of oil in there to keep that O-ring lubricated. It's also important to keep the trigger group properly lubricated to keep the gun operating properly. So to get into that trigger mechanism, basically what you want to do is pull the rear pin out of the lower receiver, and then this top part of the mechanism just pulls out, revealing the trigger group inside of it. So you basically just want to get in there with a little bit of silicone oil and hit all of the moving parts and keep them properly lubricated. Now, this is not something that you have to do every day. This is something that you could do at the end of the week or something like that. Just make sure to take a rag or something and remove all the excess oil so that that oil is not attracting dirt, which will cause unneeded wear on your airsoft gun. In order to reassemble the gun, you just simply drop the bolt carrier into the lower receiver until that hole lines up in the back of it. Then you just simply drive the pin through the back of that. You attach your charging handle to the spring and simply hold it on the top of that mechanism, and then you just simply slide your upper receiver back onto the gun this way. Just make sure that when you reassemble the upper and lower receiver that you put the barrel all the way back in with the little feed hole facing straight out. Then all you simply do is just take the upper and lower receiver, slide them together, and then just push the pin back in, and you're all done. So that's the basics on using a G&G Combat Machine gas blowback. And you know, one thing that's important to note is that there's a certain learning curve with using any of these kind of guns where you're just going to have to get out there and muddle your way through and figure out for yourself exactly what oil works best for you. How much oil do you use? How often do you put oil into the propane? Which propane works best? Which adapter works best? Does green gas work best or does propane work best? What may work for me may not work very well for you, and you really need to get out there and experiment a little bit. And if you found something that works, feel free to leave your comments on our page. We'd be more than glad to share your experience with other people, and hopefully we'll all be able to figure out how to make these things work a little bit better. But in general, this is a very dependable weapon, and it's very easy to use for using as a movie prop. So if you want to check them out for yourself, stop in here to the showroom. We'll let you try it out for yourself, or you can buy them online at replayairsoft.com. And until the next time, don't let the bastards get you down.